In this issue, we will discuss a work called The Stranger, the first novel by Albert Camus, a French writer who had a major impact on the history of modern thought and was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature at a young age. It is the story of a young man who refuses to act and lives accepting things as they are in a society where communication with others is established through exaggeration and lies, and who comes to understand the value of living in society after the death of his estranged mother. This book is recommended for those who want to become familiar with literature, as well as for readers interested in youthful and dynamic classics. There are four main characters. Mesault receives word that his mother, who worked in a trading office in former French Algeria and lived in a nursing home, has died. Marie Cardona, a former co-worker whom Mesault reunites with on the beach the day after her mother's funeral. An Arabian and his gang are gunned down by Mesault in order to save his neighbor who is stalking him because of his woman problems. And it is the prosecutor at the trial for the Arabian's murder who sees Mesault's character as dangerous. How does Mesault, a young man who lives his life without lying, like the sun that brings everything to light, deal with people who value only impressions while committing crimes and being judged as a social misfit? Mesault, a company employee, receives a telegram from a nursing home informing him of his mother's death. Wanting to send off his beloved mother as soon as possible, Mesault asks his boss for a few days' leave and takes a bus to a nursing home in the suburbs of Algeria. The director invites Mesault into his office and says, "You left my mother here because you cannot afford to take care of her. She must have been very happy to meet her old friends here and reminisce." Mesault looked over the documents and thought, "She cried a lot when she was in the nursing home, but that was out of habit, and she would have still cried when I brought her back from the nursing home a few months later." He nodded, "Exactly." After hearing about tonight's wake and tomorrow morning's funeral and burial schedule, the director shows him to a room where a hearse with nails halfway through it sits, and an old guard makes him milk coffee. Mesault, tired, takes a nap, and he hears about 10 old men, friends of his mother, entering the room and sobbing. Mesault stays the night in his room, and when the director asks him if he would like to say goodbye to his mother before the funeral director closes the hearse, Mesault simply replies, "No, thank you," and goes to attend the funeral. The director said, "As a rule, residents of the hospital are not allowed to attend funerals, but Thomas Perret, who was as close to your mother as a lover, gave special permission. Your mother and Mr. Perret were often accompanied by a nurse and took walks to the village," he told Mesault. After the priest recites a prayer, a car carrying a hearse with nails driven deeply into it and the attendees, including Mesault, begin to walk in procession. Under the intense sunlight, Mesault, wiping sweat from his handkerchief and limping lightly, spots old man Père following the procession hurrying toward the church. Once they arrive at the church, Mesault leaves the nursing home after seeing to it that the hearse is promptly buried, and he finally feels a sense of freedom on the bus ride home. The next day was also a Saturday and he had no work, so Mesault took the train to go swimming at the harbor beach, where he ran into Marie Cardona, a former colleague who used to work as a clerk at the office. The two, who had taken a liking to each other since they had worked together, watched a comedy movie on their way home from the beach, returned to their apartment, and spent the night together. The next morning, Mesault wakes up to find that Marie has already gone home. He spends a quiet day alone, observing people passing by from the window of his room facing the boulevard and thinking, "Yesterday my mother was buried, and tomorrow I will return to my daily routine of working at the office again, and nothing strange has happened after all." The day after his vacation, Mesault returns home after work and is stopped by his neighbor, Raymond Sintz, who lives in the same apartment building, who invites him into his room. After setting 2 bottles of wine on the table, Raymond, with a bandage on his right hand, tells Mesault what happened. "I hit the guy who insulted me on the train earlier." Raymond, who was not well received locally, had a mistress who paid for his room and board, but the woman refused to work and complained that she could not live well on the amount of money Raymond was sending her, so he finally lost patience. beat her and threw her out of the room with the intention of leaving her. Raymond wants to do something about the fact that the woman still has unfinished business with him and that the damage is not enough, so he asks Mesault if he can write a letter to the woman to cause her pain and regret. He sends the letter to the woman and plans to get back at her by spitting in her face when she comes back to his room, letting her sleep overnight, and then sending her away. Mesault agreed and read the letter he had written to her on the cleared table. Raymond liked the letter and showed his friendliness to Mesault, saying, "You are a true companion." Raymond told him, as it was getting late and he was going back to his room, "I'm sorry your mother died, but don't worry about it because the end of a lifetime comes to everyone. Men can always understand each other," he said, and held Mesault's hand tightly. The following week, Mesault is informed by Raymond that he has written to the woman. On his day off, after swimming with Marie, he returns to his apartment and spends the rest of the day cuddling in his room, and the next morning, at breakfast, Marie asks him, "Do you love me?" Mesault is asked, "It doesn't make sense." "I probably don't love you," he replies. Suddenly, they hear a woman screaming and the sound of violence coming from Raymond's room, and when they go to check on him and Marie, who is frightened, they find Raymond being questioned at the door by a police officer who has been called to the scene. Raymond, who came to visit a few hours after Marie had left, asked Mesault to go to the police station with him and testify that the woman had planned to betray him. One day, while working in his office, Mesault receives a phone call from Raymond. He says, "I recently ran over a woman and I'm being followed by my girlfriend's brother and a group of Arabs, so let me know if you see them around my apartment on your way home today." And then he adds, "A friend of mine has a villa by the sea near Algiers. He invited me to spend the weekend with him. Would you like to join us?" he asked. Mesault agreed. In the evening, Marie came to see Mesault and asked, "Will you marry me?" Mesault said, "I will marry you anytime. If you want." He and Raymond go to the police station, where Mesault testifies about the woman, and on the next holiday morning after Mesault testifies about the woman, Marie wakes him up, gets him ready, and leaves the apartment with Raymond, who is in a good mood, to go to the vacation home of a Raymond acquaintance. However, when the three of them notice a group of Arabs waiting outside, they make sure they are not followed and take a bus from the bus stop to enjoy swimming with Raymond's friends, Mesault and his wife, at the beach house over a small hill. Mesault swims and frolics with Marie in the sea, eats with his friends at the villa, then leaves the women to clean up after themselves and walks along the beach with Mesault and Raymond. Raymond and Mesault, old friends, reminisce, but the heat from the direct sun makes it difficult for Mesault to hear them. Suddenly, they notice two Arabs coming toward them from a remote part of the beach. Raymond signals to Mesault and they strike at each other, but Raymond is cut on the arm and cheek by an Arabian with a dagger. Seeing the opportunity, the Arabs leave, and Mesault returns to the villa, supporting the wounded Raymond, while Mesault arranges for a doctor to come while Marie and the others turn pale at the incident. When Raymond returns after being patched up, with a look of disappointment on his face, he says he is going for a walk alone on the beach, and Mesault accompanies him. They walk for a while, bathed in the overwhelming heat and light of the sun, until they come face to face again with wounded Arabs blowing reed whistles near a large rock, and stop to stare at each other. Raymond pulled out a small pistol, and Mesault said to him, "It's a bad idea to use the pistol before they make their move. If they join the others or draw their daggers, shoot them." After handing the pistol to Mesault and watching the Arabs back away, Raymond feels better and returns to the villa. But the thought of the dark and brooding women in their rooms makes Mesault pause in front of the staircase, and he begins to stroll alone along the beach again. Mesault walks along the beach, intoxicated by the heat. One of the Arabians who fled earlier is lying in the shade of a rock, and Mesault tries to pass by, ignoring him, but the man raises himself up and reaches into his pocket. The Arabian pulls out a dagger and holds it ready against Mesault, who rushes forward, unable to withstand the scorching sun. Massault, blinded by the bright light reflected on the blade, points his gun at the Arabic and pulls the trigger. He then fires 4 more bullets into the Arabian's body, which remains motionless as it falls. Massault, who was arrested for murder, was repeatedly identified. A lawyer who came to visit him in prison said, "We did a background check on you. The prosecution found that you were not upset at your mother's funeral. If we cannot successfully defend ourselves against this, it will be powerful material for the prosecution." Massault said, "Of course I loved my mother deeply, but I was terribly tired and sleepy the day I buried her. But I am sure that she didn't have to die yet." But the lawyer complains, "That's not enough." Massault is visited by Marie, who smiles at him and tells him, "When you get out of prison, we'll get married, and I want to go swimming again." During his months in detention, Massault felt the cramped confines of prison whenever he thought of the freedom of water, but as he soaked up the memories, he gradually forgot the boredom. One morning, a year later, Massault was taken to the courthouse in a convoy. The military police removed his handcuffs, and he was surprised to find the courtroom filled with people. He notices a group of newspaper reporters camped out near the jurors and learns that this is the result of the press. As each person takes his or her seat, Massault is urged by the lawyer to answer questions quickly and not to take the initiative in speaking. The trial began, and after the presiding judge had asked a few questions, witnesses were called from the audience, including Marie, Raymond, Masson, the director of the nursing home, the security guard, and old Thomas Perret. The judge asked Massault why he had put his mother in the nursing home, and the prosecutor asked him why he had returned to the place where the Arabs had been, armed with a pistol. When questioned on the witness stand, the endowment director replied, "I was amazed at how calm this man was on the day of his burial. He never tried to worship his mother's face, he never cried once, and after the burial he left immediately without offering a silent prayer at her grave." Seeing the prosecutor's triumphant appearance, Massault realized how much he was hated by the people in this courtroom, and he wanted to cry. Asked by the judge to give a statement, the guard at the nursing home looks at Massault and turns away, replying, "This man never wanted to see his mother's face, slept a lot, and drank milk coffee." Old Thomas Perret was also put on the stand and replied, "I only met this man on the day of his burial, and I didn't see anything of him because I was in too much pain myself." A slightly exasperated Marie, when asked about their relationship, replied, "I'm going to marry this man," to which the prosecutor replied, "I believe the relationship began the day after her mother's burial." Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this man went swimming the day after his mother died, had an affair with this woman, watched a comedy movie and had a good laugh. Then he sat in silence. Marie was taken out crying profusely and the hearing still continued. Masson said on the stand, "Massault is an honest man," but no one listened to him anymore. Raymond, who appeared as the last witness, said in response to the judge's questions, "It was an accident that I was on the beach. A woman in my family was beaten and a group of victims had a grudge against me." The prosecutor asked, "The letter to the woman that started the incident was written by this man. Is this man a friend of yours?" Raymond replied, "Yes, he is my friend," and Massault nodded to the same question. The prosecutor turned to the jury and said, "The day after he buried his mother, a man who indulged in the most shameful of events committed murder for a trivial reason, to put an end to an indescribably vulgar case." Massault's lawyer impatiently asked, "After all, is he being accused of burying his mother or of killing a man?" And the audience erupted in laughter. The prosecutor sat up again and said, "Of course we impeach this man because he buried his mother with the heart of a felon. This man premeditated the murder and calmly fired 4 bullets into the fallen victim so that he would not breathe. There was not a shred of heart or anything human about this man. Therefore, I demand the death penalty for this man." The judge asked, "Do you have any last words? What was your motive for committing the murder?" Massault replied with shame, "It was the sun," and the courtroom erupted in laughter. The lawyer began his argument, but the sound of the ice cream shop's whistle coming from the town brought back memories of a life that was no longer his own, and all he wanted to do was finish the trial and sleep in his cell as soon as possible. At the end of the court hearing, after lengthy deliberations, the presiding judge ruled, "You are sentenced to be beheaded in the square in the name of the French people." Massault was so deeply moved that he had nothing more to say, and was taken out by the soldiers. Moved to a cell with only a view of the sky, Massault repeatedly refuses visits from priests of the Catholic Church, recalling a story his mother once told him about his late father, who went to see the execution of a certain murderer. He said, "At the end of the day, it doesn't make much difference whether you die at 30 or at 70. Whether I die now or decades from now, it will be the same me who dies. People will eventually get used to any idea, so when I die, they will forget about me, and there will be nothing more they can do about me." As Massault lies in bed, lost in thought, a visiting priest enters his cell and calmly asks, "Why do you refuse to see me?" Massault replied, "Because I don't believe in God. I have no time to be interested in something I am not interested in." The priest turns away and says, "God help us. My friend, I speak to you not because you are on death row, but because we are all on death row. Are you living without any hope, thinking that you will die completely?" The priest was disappointed when Massault nodded yes, but the priest nodded and said, "No, I do not believe you. You must want another life, too. My child, I am with you. But because your heart is blinded, you do not understand it. Let me pray for you," placing his hand on Massault's shoulder. At that moment, something suddenly popped, and Massault grabbed the priest by the collar and shouted at him, "Don't pray. You act so confident, but your faith is not worth a hair's weight. You live like a dead man, you have no confidence in your own life. I have nothing left to live for, but I am proud about my life and about the death to which I am headed. In all the falsehoods of the society I have spent my life in, I have always valued everything with the same values. You dead man. You don't understand anything." Massault choked with emotion. As the priest turned away and left the cell with tears streaming down his face, Massault gradually regained his composure, lay down on his bed, and began to understand his dead mother. Why did my mother have a lover at the end of her life and pretend to start her life over? She must have been filled with a sense of liberation and felt herself being reborn in the nursing home, where so many lives were disappearing. Massault herself also felt reborn in this cell. Gazing up at the starry sky, Massault opened his heart to the serene indifference of this world for the first time in his life and realized that he is still as happy as ever. And his remaining wish was to be greeted with hateful curses from the many people gathered on the day of his execution, and to realize that he was not alone. What is the meaning of the death of another, the love of a mother, such things? What is the meaning of what is called God, the life one chooses, the destiny one chooses? What on earth do we know? Everyone has privileges. There are only those who have privilege in this world.